Thank you. Thank you. Well. And I welcome all of you. I'll be welcoming you again, but I can't just start with good morning. I have to welcome you because I'm so happy to see you and to see all of you on Zoom. Thank you for making my marvelous time away possible and worry-free. Thank you. Today we begin as we always begin, by ringing our peace bowl. And with the sound of this bowl, we acknowledge that these lands that we love, where we love to walk and hike and stand and look at the views, these lands are the ancestral lands of the Yavapai people, the Wipukepas, the Tolkepayas, the Cuevkepayas, and the Yavapai. As we acknowledge together our hope for peace, let us embark on a journey together with music. In the darkness of early morning, we are setting out, wondering if we will get lost. This is music created by Mary Lou to accompany the pilgrimage across Spain.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome to Granite Peak, Unitarian Universalist congregation here in sunny Prescott, Arizona. My name is Jack Wood, and I'm the worship associate for today's service. We extend a warm welcome to you all. We're glad you're able to join us and hope you are all in good health. This is the mission statement of our congregation. We are a compassionate spiritual community that celebrates diversity, nurtures the personal and spiritual growth of all ages, shares our gifts, promotes justice for all, and serves the world we live in. Please join us after today's service for socializing in small groups in the sanctuary, or for those of you on Zoom, please join us for the breakout rooms afterwards. For those who would like to talk about today's message with Reverend Patty, please meet in Davis Hall across the entryway. And for those on Zoom, stay in the Zoom main room, and we will join you as soon as we can. This will give us all time to chat with congregants in small groups. If you're joining us for the first time, please check out our website at prescottuu.org for more information about us. And if you're here in person today for the first time, there will be time to introduce yourself at the end of the service. And then please stay and chat with one or two of us, or more. We are a talkative bunch. We thank our pianist, Lena Eubin, our choir director, Mary Lou Prince, and all our Sunday morning volunteers. We also want to extend a special thanks to our guest musician, Barbara Metz. Now the important thing. Please take a moment to set your phones on worship mode. No quacking ringtones, please. Before we begin our service, we have a few announcements. We are a busy congregation, so be sure to read announcements found in the order of service, the weekly peek, on our website, and Reverend Patty's videos for updates and announcements. We have 3 regular weekly Zoom meetings. They are the Wednesday morning forum, the Wednesday afternoon faith development classes, and Friday lunch with the minister. Sandra and Robert, our children's faith development program leaders, have resumed in-person classes for pre-K in the nursery, and the older children meet in the religious education building across the street. We begin our service in the Unitarian Universalist tradition of lighting the chalice. Our chalice lighter this morning is Suki Jones. We're waiting.
This is a torch.
Thank you very much. We light this chalice, a symbol of our heritage and gratitude for this beloved community.
Good morning again. It is wonderful to see you. And I've grown to be able to recognize most of you by only seeing this part of your faces, which is pretty good. And Jack forgot one of the most important bits of news for today, and that is that there are donuts to accompany the coffee, which we are especially saying to the people on Zoom so they can feel jealous and want to come and join us. So yes, donuts. I open our gathering today with a poem in Spanish that gives you an idea of the magic of the poetry of that language that drew me to that part of the world to walk the Camino. And my father was a Spanish speaker, and my growing up was accompanied with the songs of Mexico and Latin America. In the early morning, I believe that Antonio Machado woke up. He is a 20th century poet, and he thought of these words that are beloved by Spanish speakers and poetry lovers all over the world. Anoche cuando dormía soñé, bendita ilusión, que una colmena tenía dentro de mi corazón y las doradas abejas iban fabricando en él con las amarguras viejas, blanca cera y dulce miel. And here is a translation by Robert Bly. Last night, as I was sleeping, I dreamt, marvelous error, that I had a beehive here inside my heart, and the golden bees were making white combs and sweet honey from all my old failures. Unitarian Universalism is a living tradition that calls us to transformation, that calls us to see the possibilities of each moment, the poetic possibility of transforming our disappointments and failures into sweet honey. We are called together to say yes to life. Let us sing together one of my favorite hymns, Just as Long as I Have Breath. And those of you who like to use a hymnal and see those notes, you have it, number 6 in the gray hymnal is where you will find this song.
Please rise.
Yes.
Just as long as I have breath, I must answer yes to life. Though the gate may my way, still withhold my need each day. If they ask what I did well, tell them I said yes to life.
Thank you. And now I invite us all to say the words of our covenant. Love is the doctrine of this congregation. The quest for truth its sacrament, and service is its prayer. To dwell together in peace, to seek knowledge in freedom, to serve others in community. Thus do we covenant together. And now I invite you into our time of joys and sorrows. We each come to this place. I come today rejuvenated by my long walk. And having left many sorrows along the way, particularly there is a place that has a huge iron cross up on a hill. It's one of the highest points of the Camino. And pilgrims leave stones there of what they would wish to leave behind. And I left a beautiful little piece of amethyst there at the foot of that cross. And I invite all of you to consider thinking as I did along that time of what you would like to release and leave on the side of your journey and move ahead with lighter steps. But it is true that each week we come here with a varying degree of one or the other, of more joy or more sorrow. And today we are going to use the tradition of the Prescott UU Fellowship, which is not lighting candles as we do. It is putting a stone in the bowl to represent either a joy or sorrow. Those of you who are on Zoom, if you want to prepare your own bowl with water and put stones in it, then you are certainly welcome to do that. We will be doing this for a while, and we would love your input. Today, one of the big sorrows for which I will put a stone is that on August 6th, 1945, so it was commemorated just this past week, an atomic bomb, the United States dropped an atomic bomb over Hiroshima, indiscriminately killing tens of thousands of people, profoundly disrupting and altering the lives of the survivors, many of whose story we heard while we lived in Japan those 24 years. And we attended the 40-year anniversary, which was, I believe, 38 years ago, 39 years ago. Could it be that long? I think it is that long. Anyway, I'm a terrible memory for numbers, so I always turn to Lou, who does remember the numbers. But what we do remember was that there was that began a new era in our world, that I was born into a time of great fear, that a nuclear war would happen, that the world would be destroyed. And once again, we are in a time where there is great fear. So I will put a stone to remember that. We also continue to hold Ukraine. We hold the refugees who are finding shelter, those who are seeking shelter. We hold the refugees of so many countries that do not enter the news as Ukraine has. The people of Venezuela, a country that was my home for 3 years, the people of Venezuela are still, many of them, refugees. Millions of people are refugees from that country. And we hold our personal sorrows. We hold the family and friends of Pearson Spencer. We hold Peter and Joe, who are mourning the death of Janer Eldridge, who died peacefully in her hundreds and carried the love of her family with her to the next place. We also hold Dan Reardon, who is mourning the death of his beloved Sandy, and Karen Hagbird mourning the death of her brother Gordy. And now it is your time to give the names of those who you are holding so that I can tell them to the people who are on Zoom, and you on Zoom, if there are, I'm looking at Joanne Fogel, who is on Zoom, and wanting to hold her, although she is doing better, She was in the hospital, so we hold her, and Marilyn and Bob Coulter, and Jim and Annabeth Robinson. I'm just looking through Zoom, and I can see Karen holding her cerise, who I hope is okay. But I invite you, are there any joys and sorrows you would like to bring to the whole community? Two new great grandsons. Wow. Thank you, Fred. And oh, of course, and Ken Briefer. And Jack Stanton in joy because he has medication now that he's not falling. Yay, Ken. Yay. Yay, Jack. I'm glad to see you here. Anyone else? Is there anyone in the chat? So now I will deposit yes. Oh, Art.
Well, a happy one. We're excited to announce that we're moving.
Art and Marianne, this is very important. They're moving, but the important part is to a new place in town. So, because that would be a sorrow. And they say it's a good place for parties. So so are there any other sorrows? So now we will enter, yes, Hugh. Yes, and Hugh just spoke of of attending the memorial service for his daughter in Maryland last week. We will hold you, Hugh, and Norma, who was a good mother to her as well. Tracy, something on chat. I can't seem to see. Oh, so choir practice was a joy. Thank you. And now we will have some music during which you can meditate. Is that okay? Okay. We will have some music during which I invite you to meditate or to come and put a stone for a joy or sorrow.
It's not on.
I will add one last stone for all of those joys and sorrows that we keep in our hearts. And for my baby brother who lost his wife 5 years ago and now is gloriously getting married again and very happy. Let us take a breath together and then please join me in a spirit of meditation and prayer. Spirit of life, we are here. We are carrying joys of children being born, people recovering from illness, moving to new places, happiness in new love, and so many other joys that we are holding, and the sorrows related with being human as well, with the death, with the illnesses, and the suffering that is also a part of life. We give thanks for this community that accompanies us through all of these times. We ask for courage to reach out to each other. And we ask for that blessing of comfort that comes from this universe we believe to be filled with love. For all these things we pray. Amen. And now let us sing together, Walking, Walking with You.
This morning, let us embrace the feeling of connection and community that we have when we gather here each week. Let us remember that this congregation and its programs are supported by your generosity. We also give back to the greater community through our Seeds of Support program. This month's recipient is the Hungry Kids program. Please read about them in your order of service. To give online, go to prescottuu.org/giving. On the bottom left-hand side, click the Support Granite Peak to contribute. The link is also available in the chat in this video. Please enjoy our offertory music. Bored by Margaret Atwood. All those times I was bored out of my mind, holding the log while he sawed it, holding the string while he measured boards, distances between things, or pounded stakes into the ground for rows and rows of lettuces and beets, which I then, bored, weeded. Or sat in the back of the car, or sat still in boats, sat, while at the prow, stern, wheel, he drove, steered, paddled. It wasn't even boredom. It was looking hard and up close at the small details. Myopia, the worn gunwales, the intricate twill of the seat cover, the acid crumbs of loam, the granular pink rock, its igneous veins, the sea fans of dry moss, the blackish, and then the graying bristles on the back of his neck. Sometimes he would whistle, sometimes I would. The boring rhythm of doing things over and over, carrying the wood, drying the dishes, such minutia. It's what the animals spend most of their time at, ferrying the sand, grain by grain, from their tunnels, shuffling the leaves in their burrows. He pointed such things out, and I would look at the world texture of his square finger, earth under the nail. Why do I remember it as sunnier all the time then, although it more often rained? And more birdsong? I could hardly wait to get the hell out of there, to anywhere else. Perhaps, though, boredom is happier. It is for dogs and groundhogs. Now I wouldn't be bored. Now I would know too much. Now I would know.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you. Last summer, I walked the mountainous portions of the Camino de Santiago. I walked over the Pyrenees in the footsteps of the people of the resistance of France who had taken the people who were going to be killed and took them up over the Pyrenees to save them. I had never done anything like that before, and I was scared. Would I make it? To my surprise, I found that I loved those days walking, even though I would always get to a point where I would wonder if I could go on, especially after around 24 kilometers. And as I was listening to the needs of my body, I found that I told myself to stop, and I rested, and I was able to climb up mountains and descend them slowly and navigate paths made of boulders and over water and old Roman roads without tripping, because I walked slowly and I kept looking in front of me. And this year I returned to do the midsection because it seemed important to me that I experience the whole of that pilgrimage road. And that was the scariest part for me because of the heat and lack of shade. And in May, as I prepared, I would think that in only a few weeks, do you do this where you're somewhere and you think, in 2 weeks, I'm going to be in a very different place doing this thing. I would think I'm going to be walking one foot in front of the other, listening and walking all the way to the horizon. And I think that the greatest lesson that I learned this summer was the importance of listening to the needs of my body and soul. On my first day, after only one night's sleep, which is a long story, after a long plane ride, I woke early in order to begin my walk in the cool darkness. I woke at about 4. The temperatures would go over 107 that day, my phone was telling me. Another pilgrim, Anne from Versailles, checked out at the same time, so we left together in the darkness, looking for the yellow arrows that would guide us out of the city. Somebody a few years ago put yellow arrows everywhere so that you can see those and walk, but you can't see them at 4 in the morning when it is dark. So we looked for them together with a flashlight. And soon we were out of the city, or it didn't seem soon. Now it does, looking back. It seemed like a long time on those city streets. And then we got out of the city and onto one of those long roads that are often pictured as representative of the Camino de Santiago. This was the meseta, the long high ground with no shade and roads that appeared to disappear into the horizon. Anne had been walking for 10 days and she told me, 2 pilgrims died yesterday in the heat. One was a father from Germany traveling with his son. He was in his 40s, she said. Later, I learned that 3 people had died. And at night, that night, I heard an ambulance coming. Someone else was in trouble. This was the part that had most frightened me with my Scottish skin. And Anne and I walked together for 20 kilometers. And then we said goodbye because her body was telling her she shouldn't walk any farther. There were 8 more to go before I could rest. My breathing meditation, which I had kept doing through that whole 20 kilometers of just breathing in and out and finding a kind of refuge. When I breathe in and out, I think of this refuge within my body. It's not my idea, it's Thich Nhat Hanh's. I highly recommend reading his book about breathing meditations. But as I walked, as I was doing that, I kept checking in with my body. Are you okay? Are you okay, feet? Are you okay, head? Are you breathing? Are you feeling too tired? There was no shade the entire day except my hat. And my body kept telling me that I was okay. Tired after only a short night of rest. But I was okay. By the roadside, someone had created a place like a spring with clear, cool water in this kind of a bucket thing. To fill water bottles, there was a spigot for water bottles, and there was a place to dip our hands and splash ourselves with water. There was an umbrella, a tiny umbrella, that only one person could stand. And it doesn't make that much difference at 107 degrees, but it gave a little shade. And there were 2 other pilgrims, humans I'd never met before, also splashing. One of them, someone who would become a friend later on the Camino. She would share some days with me. And we had 3 kilometers to go, walking slowly, the refreshing cool gradually disappearing into the heat, the water we had splashed on our faces feeling like it had started to boil. My feet were very tired. Everything was tired, but I didn't think I was in danger. One foot in front of the other, sips of water, standing still for a moment to wiggle my toes and make sure they could wiggle, and just seeing that road stretching ahead. As I was checking in with myself, listening to my body, all of that became essential to my ability to continue. And I heard by those people who died what a price you pay by not listening. And I imagine many of you out there can remember a time that perhaps you didn't listen. And when I listened, I learned that I needed to slow even slower. I was one of the slowest pilgrims on the Camino. But I learned that I needed to slow or stop, sip some water, rest a little bit, eat something, which didn't really ever taste good for some reason. I don't know. But during these hours, over and over, I was reminded that my body needed my attention. And since I stopped that walk, after 3 weeks of paying close attention, I've been trying to continue that practice of paying attention on these days when I am back and I'm only doing those neighborhood walks, but paying attention during the day. Am I feeling tired? Do I need water? Do I need to stop in the shade? I wonder if together we could just stop for a moment and listen right now. What is your body telling you? I'll ring my bell. What is your body telling you? I believe that what you hear is part of the wisdom for those boring times that pop up unexpectedly. And we have many of those when we are stuck in traffic, sitting in an emergency room waiting area, or when they tell you to come in, but then they leave you for 4 hours, or waiting for a call that is slow to arrive, or waiting on the phone, listening to that awful music, waiting for someone to come, or embarking, and I'm saying this loudly, embarking on a dangerous job, like climbing a ladder to clean out the gutters. Maybe your inner voice is saying, don't do that. Listen to the voice that says, hire it out. Or even when you're making a difficult phone call and you're about to make it, and your inner voice is saying, you're too tired to do that right now. Wait a little bit, or wait till tomorrow. Lots of accidents, I've come to believe, might be avoided if we listen to our bodies. Because one part that's very interesting on the Camino is I realized if I tripped and twisted my ankle to any degree, eventually I probably would have to stop because I couldn't keep going. So I was always thinking, how can I keep walking for 21 days in a row? I mean, how, and so you become more careful. And I think that would be a good way to think of our lives when we go through our days. I think it would avoid some suffering. And looking back, I see that this unrelenting practice of caring for myself and listening to myself made me happy. It actually lifted my spirits to listen, because I had to listen, especially on that first day, because people were dying and I was very tired. In our daily lives, we might not die, but I do think that it increases our access to joy when we listen. Most days I began my walk in the darkness. With each day, my ears began opening more and more to the sounds around me. The birds that were waking up at dawn joyously in all kinds of voices, choruses of insects that we can hear right now. We did. They're listening to us. But there were choruses of insects in the wheat fields that seemed to be singing back and forth to each other, from one side to the other. One day, for hours walking along the side of an irrigation ditch, I listened to the frogs. At first, I thought they were birds or insects, and then I realized they were frogs. And on the Camino, I stopped for almost every rose bush to see if I could catch the scent. And it gave me a little rest. And nobody seemed to mind in their gardens that I would just stop by the gate and walk by each one. And boy, did I catch the scent of some glorious roses and other flowers. And I would stop to try to locate that bird who was serenading me from somewhere. And as I concentrated on all that was pouring in through my senses, I was being renewed. I'm trying to keep that sense of renewal by intentionally heightening my senses to the sounds of the natural world, the smells after the rain here, the touch of the rough bark of the trees, the rocky feel of those forest paths, the sound from the tops of the trees that sounds so much like the ocean to me. Could we close our eyes? Maybe the insects will start singing again. Let's close our eyes and think about what we notice right now. Air conditioner, car. Our insects did not return. But I believe that if we keep that practice, although we will hear those cars and those air conditioners, we will also hear the birds. Just as I was writing this yesterday, the rain started up. How many of you experienced the rain yesterday? And I think and I know it's funny in Arizona. I think in the Midwest, it falls everywhere, but in Arizona, it doesn't. But I know that if you heard the rain, you probably heard it. Sometimes it's pounding on skylights or a metal roof, or sometimes it's that gentle, gentle sound. And I leaned back in my chair and listened. And then I waited to go back to this until it stopped. And then the sun appeared again, and it began to filter through the trees. On the Camino, they say, when the Camino ends, it begins. And I wonder if that is true as well for all of us as we emerge from 2.5 years of living life differently. And it's not over yet, unfortunately. We together have certainly shared in some long, boring bits of the road, would you say? And it's been scary, like that first day of the Camino when I heard that people were dying. There's been that underlying fear as well. I wonder what we have learned. And I hope you think about that. Maybe we can talk about that after the service. But this summer, after all those days of long days of listening, there were moments and even whole days when I felt as if I surrendered myself to all of it. I surrendered to my body's needs, the sky that was ever changing, so much like the Arizona sky, and that rich sensory experience, and that long, endless road. Nothing I could do could rush me to my destination. I was happiest when I did not look at my phone to see how many kilometers I had walked. I just settled into that moment, leaning back and catching what seemed to be the whole world in my arms. Robin Wall Kimmerer writes in Braiding Sweetgrass that the natural world is our teacher. This summer, I think the natural world was telling me to surrender. I am glad that my intuition that led me to make this walk, I'm glad I listened to that, for it gave me what I needed to come back to myself, to heal from those concentrated times of fear and isolation of the pandemic. By listening to myself, what was around me, and then surrendering to the road, I healed. And during this long walk, I found a spiritual practice that cleared my heart and mind of the unnecessary, which is interesting because I've been clearing our house of the unnecessary. And it's quite similar, actually, what we do with all the stuff we keep up here and here, and cleaning out our cupboards and garages and those rented places of what we no longer need. That clearing helped me open. It helped me be open to what was around me. It left room for the unexpected. Once, as I sighed in front of a formidable concrete overpass above a busy highway, as I turned the corner, I found a camper that was owned by a man named Marcus from Germany, who decided to spend his whole summer creating an oasis for pilgrims on that part of the Meseta. Sit, he said, have a glass of orange juice, take a rest. Do you need anything? I needed what he had brought all the way from Germany. On my first day, before I embarked on that final 8 kilometers in 107-degree heat, I don't like to ask for help, but I was hearing college students at the table next to me talking about their electrolyte packages that were just like the ones I had left in my baggage. And my inner voice was telling me that I needed to ask them for one, and I needed to gratefully receive one from them. And I did. And I believe it really helped me make those last 8 kilometers. These long, hard stretches were given ease by the other pilgrims. By seeing others, it helped to see others, even if they were always walking faster than I was. Walking up ahead or behind, there was a guy from Barcelona with his Chihuahua in a little pack in front of him. And it was wonderful to see those people who'd made a business of giving us shelter. And I've heard similar stories from many of you. I've heard you tell of someone who showed up to help after you gave birth, or when you were ill and needed rides to the hospital, or who offered out of the blue because they heard something that you might need this, to meet with you every week for many months after you'd gone through something difficult. And that's how we heal in this community. Sometimes we write a card, we receive something that is a message that is just what we need. Because somehow we had that feeling, that voice that told us about that. I believe that many of you have already experienced what they call the magic of the Camino. Those times are only reached by crossing over those carefully built barriers we have to asking or offering help. They arise from those inner voices that tell us not only what we need, but what we may need to ask of others, or what we may need to give others. Keep up that practice if you are doing it, and start it up if you are not. Try it out if you're wondering what that magic might feel like. That is where the practice of surrender can lead us. If you have that urge, surrender to it. When the road is long before us and the path seems unchanging, when we are moving through what appears to be the boring bits of our lives, or when we stumble or fall out of a tree, may we find the wisdom that is around us and within us and act upon it. That will be the blessing of the Camino. Amen, and may it be so. And now I invite you to let us sing together a song that is our journey song for Unitarian Universalists, Wo Ya Ya. Please rise in body or spirit. Going, heaven knows where we are going. We know within, and we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there. We know we will. Be hard, we know, and the road will be muddy and rough, but we'll get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. Oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah, oh yeah, yeah. We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Oh, you may be seated. May we, as a community and as individuals, open ourselves. I'll start again. We're going to laugh about this in 10 years, I hope. May we open ourselves to our inner voices that tell us to take care and ask for help. May we open ourselves to the creation that is around us, in the trees and the wide vistas, the mountains and the insects that buzz and sing from everywhere. As the pilgrimage of this congregation reaches the 25-year mark, let us feel all that has brought us to this place. Let us listen now to the music that accompanies those last steps when we feel that we can walk no more. Let us listen to the pilgrims as they arrive from everywhere at last. This is arrival.
Now they're making noise.
Thank you. And I invite any of you after the service, if you would like to come and look at this instrument that we have several in our home that came from Japan and are perfect journey instruments. Thank you. And I would love to invite all of you who are on Zoom, if you would like to stay, we're going to be moving this to Davis Hall. And those of you who'd like to ask me questions can do that then. And so let us, and then we will, after we extinguish the chalice, I will invite all of you to speak together. But first I wonder, do we have any visitors today? I always forget to. That's all right. Okay. You can find out who you each other are after the service. So let us extinguish our chalice together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. And did I say it is wonderful to see you and be back? Thank you. Thank you.